Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Namaduhu wa nasalli ala Rasul al-Kareem. Viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the previous video, there was discussion about what is most precious in the treasures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives guidance to whom He wishes. And guidance is the best of blessings that a person can have. The Quran, we are told that had it not been for the believers who would give up all hope, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have given houses of gold and silver to the unbelievers. So the material things of this dunya should not deceive people into thinking that this is success. Anything that is followed by death, anything that is going to end with death, cannot be considered success. Death cancels all the successes of the world. Genghis Khan, the great conqueror, he conquered the world, but today they cannot even find his grave. On the other hand, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he came to guide humanity, and millions of people were guided by his teachings. And today, millions and millions of people go and visit his grave. So, for all these hundreds of years, people have gone there and have visited and keep going till the end of times. This is success. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows through examples. The name of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned 24/7 after the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everywhere in the world, millions of people are calling the azan, they're calling the akama. His name is being mentioned along with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what is called success. He didn't live in a palace. He didn't have army of servants. He didn't live in luxury. He lived a very simple life. For days there was no food in the house. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored him, and billions of people, they send salams, they send their salams to him every day. So this is something that people of the world do not know. Most people do not know. They consider success only in terms of material things. And the Quran calls these conveniences of life. These are not successes. Unfortunately, the modern educational system just stresses the material part of human life. That's why it's a one-eyed system. The other eye is completely blind. It doesn't look at the teachings of humanity. It doesn't look at how humanity was brought from a stage of complete ignorance, of darkness, into light. The teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought humanity to a level, to a point that it has not reached since that time. This is the requirement. This is something that Muslims were supposed to guide people to this teachings. Unfortunately, they got so caught up in the material world that they abandoned that and started pursuing a different course. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought humiliation. A king does not have to sweep the floors and clean the toilets. The king can hire people to do these chores. When the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam started doing the chores of unbelievers, pursuing the material things of the dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took the blessings of the wahi, of the Quran, and they've started fighting with each other over these things. There is a hadith to that effect, that when my ummah considers this world something important, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will be deprived of the blessings of the revelation. And then they will fight with each other and they will go down in the estimation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this ummah has been sent for a reason. There is another hadith, something to the effect, the essence of that is that there was an unbeliever fisherman and he was fishing, taking the name of his gods, Lat and Uzza. These were the gods of the people of earlier times. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept giving him fish. Every time he would throw the net, it would come full of fish. And at the end of the day, his boat was full. While there was a believer who would take the name of Allah, he would take Bismillah Rahman Rahim, and the net would come back empty. And it is said that at the end of the day, one fish was caught, and as he was trying to catch it, it slipped out of his hand. And this believer said, Allah, you gave me this, and you took it back, so I'm pleased. He said, Alhamdulillah. He still praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the angel asked Allah why this is so, that this unbeliever is taking the name of his gods, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala filled his boat with fish, while the believer took his name and it came back empty. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifted the veil and showed the angel where the unbeliever was going and showed where the believer was going. So the angel said, Ya Allah, if you give this man, this unbeliever, everything, he is still a loser. And if you give this believer nothing of this world, he's still a winner. So these are the teachings that have been forgotten. People think in terms of material possessions as something to be proud of. These are all tests from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are things that the shaitan uses to deceive people. These are things that shaitan makes people fight with each other. You see, throughout history, people have been fighting for dominance, for power, for material things. And millions of people have been killed. That is how these so-called great conquerors, people like Genghis Khan, when they died, they went into the ground and they are forgotten. They left behind nothing but destruction. And history remembers them as cruel, as barbaric. They did not do anything for humanity. While on the other hand, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought success to humanity, brought success to the people of that time and those who followed him. So the life is short and time is passing. There is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to do certain things before certain things happen. And one of them is youth before old age. In other words, in youth, one is able to do, one has strength and is able to do more good deeds. So he stressed, while you are young, do before old age comes. While you are healthy, do before you become sick. So when one is healthy, this is a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one should try to do as many good deeds as possible before sickness comes. And the other one is while you have time, free time, before you become busy. So a person gets involved in certain things and doesn't have time, then of course he has lost that opportunity. So if Allah has given a person ease, that time is not to be wasted in idle pursuits, in frivolous pursuits. That's a time to be used for preparation of the akhirah. So he can get rewards in the akhirah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is a blessing. And then of course, life before death. and wealth before poverty. These are all blessings. If a person has been blessed with wealth, he should use it in a way to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not squander it on useless things. So all these things are advice from the one who knows, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him knowledge. These are things that scientists cannot tell people because the scientists do not know what happens when a person enters his grave. Science comes to an end. Science has no knowledge of what's beyond a person's life, this present life. So no matter how much knowledge a person has of science, he's not going to be able to tell what happens in the next life. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given very detailed knowledge of what is to come. And this is the need of all mankind. The mankind today is going in the wrong direction. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps reminding people from time to time. All these calamities that come, they are reminders that the one who has complete power, he is able to change your condition. He can change your bad condition into good and good into bad. And it doesn't take any effort on the part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Qarun, with all his wealth, was swallowed by the earth. And Pharaoh, with all his power, was also destroyed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in an instant. We know from examples in history that nations that were very powerful, that had great armies, when destruction came to them, it happened so quickly that everybody was shocked. So behind this curtain, behind the scenes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power is there. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave instructions, gave advice to his companions, to Sahaba. And they were very wise people. They paid attention to what he said. They paid attention to his teachings. And every time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed them. But when the wealth came to them, they were not deceived. The iman of the companions, the Sahaba, was so high that the wealth, the power, did not deceive them. They remained steadfast. They did not leave that life that was given to them by Rasulullah, as the later Muslims were. When the wealth came, they were deceived by the power and the wealth, and they gave up their responsibility. So this ummah of Rasulullah has a grave responsibility. Responsibility is to guide humanity. And of course, before it can guide humanity, it has to be aware, it has to have the knowledge that Allah has given in the Quran and through His Messenger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed this ummah with a knowledge that no one else can achieve through their own efforts. The knowledge of science can be achieved by people who make effort, and one does not have to be a believer, while the knowledge of revelation requires iman, requires belief, and it requires effort, and it requires lifelong effort. It's not a subject. Islam is not a subject that you study along with other subjects in a school. Unfortunately, there is a trend in many countries to teach Islam as a subject, and that just takes away from the importance of this. It's treated like any other subject. In many institutions, they give the same time, and people take the test and they think they know Islam. Islam is something to be lived on a daily basis. The blessing, the revelation come when a person starts living like the, the like the example of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. His life is the model. The Quran calls his life the model. And the model, of course, has to be followed. Many people throughout centuries have tried to revive that life. And every now and then there is a movement to revive that. So people who are interested in knowing what that life is, they have to take out time. And that, of course, that requires effort. So nothing we know is easy. Going to Jannah, going to paradise is a big effort. There's a long hadith, something to the effect that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the paradise, He told Jibreel alayhi salam to go and see. And when he saw it, he came back, he said, Ya Allah, this is so beautiful. Anyone who hears about it would want to go there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surrounded that with effort, with hardships, with struggle, with salat, with fasting, with hajj, with doing good deeds, staying away from haram, the struggle, effort. So when Jibreel Islam, he told him to go and see it again, he said, Ya Allah, it's so hard, no one will go there. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created hell. And he told him to go and see what it's like. He saw and he said, Ya Allah, it's so horrible that anyone who hears about it will not go there, would not want to go there. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surrounded it with pleasures, with haram, with prohibited, with pleasurable activities that were disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Jibreel Islam went to see that again, he said, Ya Allah, it is so easy, so pleasurable that everyone will end up in this. So this is an important reminder that hell is surrounded by a lot of all the pleasures that are prohibited by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put restrictions on certain things. And people should become aware of what the rules are. Just like people are aware of the rules of the state, that if you cross the limits, there are consequences. The consequences of breaking Allah's laws are not only in this life, they go beyond this life. The consequences of breaking the rules of the state are only as long as a person is alive. But the consequences of breaking Allah's laws are far more serious. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives people time to repent. He gives people time to come back on the right track. This is very important that people pay attention to what are the rules, what are the guidelines. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is keeping account of every deed, no matter how small it is. And on the Day of Judgment, everyone will be able to see his record. Just imagine how careful people are when they know they are going to be evaluated, when their boss is going to call them and is going to ask them, or show them their record, their performance. So they are afraid. They make all efforts to make sure that they are going in the right direction. So people should have the same concern that their record is being prepared, and the record is being prepared to an extent that nothing is hidden. So all these are reminders that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to let people get away in the akhirah. In the dunya, He gives respite. He gives respite to people, even like people like Genghis Khan, who killed millions of people. But the day will come where he will stand and have to give account for that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps warning people that He's watching and people will have to give an account at a certain time. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us understanding of the Quran, to give us the understanding of Rasulullah's life, and to help us to follow in his footsteps. Wa akhir dawana in alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.